So, today's episode is called the Auditable Agent. The EU AI Act tells you why to log, not what. Deriving the rest is the whole series. So, you'd actually expect a regulation about high-risk AI to hand you a checklist, right? So, it will just tell you, log these fields, keep them this long. But the truth is that if you open Article 12 of the EU AI Act, there is no list. It just says that the system shall technically allow the automatic recording of event logs, and then instead of listing fields, it just defines logging by its purpose. So basically just says logs. You have purposes. So the purposes, you have 3 of them, and they are more like features more than fields. So the logs first must let you spot a situation where the system starts presenting a risk. So that's the first one. B, feed post-market monitoring, and C, monitor the operation of the system. Just notice one thing is that C is the one that will bite. This one is the hardest one. We need to talk about this one deeper. We will come back to it later on. So there is only one exception to this rule, that there are no fields specified, and it was also just for biometric ID. So for biometric ID, you need to record these fields: start and end time, reference database, input that led to a match, who verified the result. So all of these only for biometric ID. So outside of biometric ID, we want to talk about our agent. So for our agent, which is not a biometric scanner, of course, the field list does not exist in the law, so it's ours to derive. The act tells you why you log, never tells you what. So, which means by the end, how can we fulfill these purposes? How can we build a system that can respect these goals? That's what we want to talk about. So, let's take purpose C, which was monitor the operation. This one that quietly forces everything. To monitor the operation, you have to be able to answer a question. And it turns out raw telemetry cannot answer it. So here is your telemetry. It already gives you for free a span, timestamp, the agent that ran the process on refund A91. Everything looks fine. So you have the latency, you have the token account, you have the tool that was used, the status. Basically, it tells you what happened. Now, but the audit does not ask just what happened. What the audit actually asks is, should that have happened by that agent and at that point of the operation? So let's look at the span again. So let's look here. There is no field that answered why, like, should it have happened? Is it okay that it happened in the context of our process? So the telemetry is completely silent on whether the action was correct or not. It only knows the action occurred. And that is the gap that we need to fill in one line. Should it have happened is only answerable against a norm, a model of what the agent was supposed to do. So if you don't know how to build a normative model of your process, please check my previous video. I have a full video talking about how to build a normative model, how to keep versions of it, why we do that, why we have conformance, all of these things. So in the context of this playlist, everything is tied to each other. So one thing I wanted to explain deeply, and again, I know I'm insisting on this fact, but it's very important that I repeat it. Purpose C does not just ask for more logging, it forces a specific bundle of evidence. So you need to have an audit pack. And we already, in our series, had 3 parts that we have already built, that we have already spoken about, that do exactly that. First of all, we need to have an immutable trace store. So you have logs that are temper evident, replayable from every run of your agent. Second, a versioned normative model. This is another video. You need the jure and you need the ruler. This is something I discussed already, and this is also from a paper from Professor Van der Hulst. So you need to know which version of the rules it broke. This is something you need to learn. Third is the conformance verdict. So you need to replay the trace on the model and get an answer. So conformant here is the deviation and exactly where it happened. So replay and alignment, the tools we spent whole episodes on, are important for this conformance verdict. Now, the honesty, and this matters, the Act mandates purpose adequate logging. It does not say, okay, please implement these. This is more a defensible reading of what purpose C requires. It's a best practice. So generally, it's not a certified mandate. It's more like something that you could predict would bring answers to that question. So you build it generally to answer the question, not because a clause spells it out. You just can, with this bundle, you can make the difference between we logged behavior and we can prove the agent behaved the correct way. So before you go building, I wanted to tell you that most enterprise LLM agents are not automatically high risk. High risk is decided by the use case listed in Annex 3. So yeah, so it's not by the tech. It's more the use case. There are two words. If your agent operates in Annex 3 use case, for example, hiring, credit scoring, this one to the left, essential services, biometrics, law enforcement, and then the audit pack, the audit pack there is mandatory. Everywhere else, it is not mandated, but it is still prudent to have the same exact pack of auditing because it is your evidence if anything goes wrong. And to be honest, these are deterministic rules that depends on what, but depends on also which situation, but they do not cost a lot in compute. So you're building it regardless. The only question is whether the law forces your hand or not. Two traps would pull you quietly into the mandatory world. First, agentic systems are assessed holistically. So let's say you have a narrow little sub-agent you thought was harmless, but gets pulled in if its output feeds a high-risk decision. So you cannot carve one component out and call it low risk in isolation if it contributes to high-risk outcome. So if a small part you think, like even if it's a small part of a high-risk system, you still need to audit it. Second, you need to prove that your system is not high risk, especially, and they will be very focused if you are in one of these use cases. So claiming the Article 6 derogation that lets you say it doesn't pose high risk, itself triggers a documentation duty under 6.4. So you have to write down and justify why you are not high risk. So that's the second way, which flips the real question. It was never do I have to, it's can I prove my scope call was right? And proving it needs the same pack. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about the numbers, so you don't really need to memorize. This is more about the stakes. I personally do not remember these. It's just something to know about the repercussions if you do shitty work as an engineer. So don't do shitty work, please. So the top tier, Article 90, so this one, prohibited practices, 35 million of, or 7% of worldwide turnover. That's only for Article 5 for prohibited practices. So the outright banned stuff, that's the first one. Then you have record keeping is not there. So this is more like an data engineering issue, logging issue. So that's 15 million euros or 3% of worldwide turnover, whichever is higher. That is, and for the bottom tier, this one is feeding authorities misleading information, and that one is 7.5 million or 1% of your turnover. The clock and the date starts in July, as recorded of July 2026, this starts applying in starting of August 2026. So the Digital Omnibus that was signed on the 26th of 8th of July 2026 was not published yet by the official journal. But just to tell you, all of this is gonna be introduced in the next 1 or 2 years from the publication of this video. And the issue is that there is no shortcut yet, so no harmonized standards or no automatic presumption of conformity. As of now, none have been cited in the official journal, so you don't really have a clear path. The dedicated AI logging standard, ISO 24970, is still only a final draft stage. The Commission's own monitoring plan template is overdue, which all points one way. You cannot wait for the tooling to tell you what to do. You build the evidence bundle from first principles now, and then maybe you'd have to do small adjustments later on, but this is something that you can build already now. So today is the finale. This was the final episode. We have spoken about conformance. We have spoken about actually this idea of auditing 2.0 and governance predates agentic AI systems by 15 years. This was from a paper from 2010 from Professor van der Als. And we have spoken how log is different from auditing and how you derive from the purpose. We have spoken about many things in these 20 episodes. Upcoming, I'll be talking about agentic AI systems architecture, and there will be many more subjects on this channel. If you like the content, please like and subscribe, and follow me on LinkedIn. Have a nice day.